if you are a person who longs to stay home with their kids, then I'd like to challenge you to think that this life is for you. You are worthy of this life, and please don't lose sight of that. Don't shut yourself down by saying that is for the privileged, it is not for me, because it is not true, and I'm the living proof here of that. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Nives and I've recently left my career in order to stay home and homeschool my children. So that's essentially what I talk about on this channel. I've recently made a video about how modern feminism in a way duped women into thinking that the path of career woman and choosing to prioritize and grow constantly in the corporate world is the only way to go and is the place for women. And I've gotten some lovely comments, including some criticism. And in one of the comments, somebody said, well, this is such obvious privilege or display of privilege, something like that. I think the person might have deleted that comment since, but that comment inspired me in thinking about the concept of privilege, and especially the concept of stay-at-home mother or stay-at-home parent or homeschooling mother privilege. So I wanted to chat about that and have fun with it. Are homeschooling parents, is a homeschooling mother privileged? So in order to talk about privilege, I think we need to define the term privilege. And a simple Google search that I've done, and I don't have this in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing, but from what I remember, it said that privilege is a special advantage that is given or granted to specific people or groups of people. So in the case of homeschooling, though nobody grants us the privilege of homeschooling, we are free to homeschool. We, I guess, would be granted that privilege by our financial status. And nowadays, privilege is a word that's thrown left and right to invalidate a person's hard work or a person's personal circumstances. So here's the thing. Every single one of us has privilege over another person. Every single one of us has someone that is more privileged than we are. So someone has a bigger home, someone has had a better childhood, someone has had a worse childhood, someone has a worse home, worse income, someone is in a worse position, and that is how life works. We are all privileged in our own way. Even the poorest person that you can think of has privilege over another person who's in worse circumstances. And I always chuckle a little bit when I hear the word privilege used towards me, because it's a judgment that's passed just by looking at me, right? But I come from a very underprivileged background. I am a war child. I was a refugee. I came to Canada as an immigrant. I spent a long time as part of my childhood barely seeing my parents because they had to really work hard to even make the minimum income for us to survive and live in this country. And that was our experience. So I do not come from a privileged background, and I'm very, very well aware what the difference between classes is. But that said, I still like to think that my own life experience and everything that I've gone through and everything I've seen has given me the resilience to go about this life. And I don't envy a single person who's financially more well off than I am. I don't feel bad about my childhood. I don't feel, when I'm saying it, I don't feel any shame about it. It is what it is, and it's led me to where I am now. And also, I don't get insulted by being called privileged, because I think a lot of people use that term mindlessly. They use that term thinking of a person's skin color, a person's name, a person's appearance, a person's sex or gender. That is the type of word that we see being used constantly around the society to invalidate a person's experience without even thinking about what could that person have gone through, or what were the sacrifices that that person may have made to get to where she is right now. Okay, so with the idea of privilege discussed, let's talk about homeschooling privilege or stay-at-home mother privilege in particular. All right, so we know that we all have privilege compared to someone else, so we are all privileged in our own unique way, and privilege is inherent to the human experience and to living in a society. I think that women choosing to work and to have access to a certain lifestyle are privileged too. They are privileged financially, they are privileged in terms of what activities or what kind of outings they can offer their families, what kind of restaurants they can eat that at, what kind of travels they can go on, what kind of home they live in. They have that privilege. They have the material financial privilege. Now, I think that homeschooling parents are very much privileged. They might not be as financially privileged as those who have two incomes are, but we have the privilege of time and the privilege of seeing our children at every step of their path and at being the main influence in their life. And to me, that is really priceless. And that's what we had to weigh as a family in order to decide to let go of the dual income and embrace a more frugal way of living. So yes, we all make sacrifices constantly because in order to gain access to a certain type of privilege, we have to let go of another type of privilege. So I think one of the main presumptions about stay-at-home mothers and single income families and homeschooling families is that homeschoolers have a certain type of financial status that allows them to stay at home with their children and to be a single income family, or they have specific type of assets, or they have all their debts paid off, and they're basically in a tax bracket that allows them that kind of lifestyle. And I can see why you would think that. I think as a society, in our culture, we clearly value money over time, because the premise of this whole discussion is, how could you really have to be well off in order to be able to choose to stay at home and have that time with your children, or you would never ever let go of that second income. When the reality is, we let go of that second income and we get into a lower income family situation on purpose. This is a choice that we've made because to us, the quality of time and of being close to our children and of keeping our family together is worth much more than that dual income was. And so for our family in particular, we stopped thriving for that Western climb of always wanting more and newer pieces of furniture, more room in our house, more bathrooms, a bigger car, more activities that our children are constantly going on. So on and so forth. So when my husband and I brought our home, this was going to be our starter home. That's what we thought, right? That was the mindset at the time. But now this is just our home. This is not a starter home. This is the place where we are raising our family and we are educating our children, and it is just our home. And while it would be nice to have a bigger house or more space in the backyard, we are not focused on acquiring more possessions and on materially propelling ourselves in a newer tax bracket. Both my husband and I used to be big travelers. We traveled the world together and alone, and we both lived in multiple different countries around the world as well. So that was something that we were going to continue to do with our children. And right now that is not possible, and that's okay, because that is the type of sacrifice we are making. And these are the decisions and the trade-offs we had to do in order to live the life that we do live. I think it's hard for people to imagine themselves being a low-income family or admitting they're a low-income family, but there are so many of us who are in that situation willingly. Hi everyone, I'm currently editing this video and I thought I would make a quick interruption to clarify that I should have probably used the term lower income as opposed to low income. The bar for low income is set incredibly low, which is really sad, but in terms of the rest of the society or the rest of the dual income families all around us, as a homeschooling single income family, our financial situation is definitely not at par with the rest of our neighbors or the rest of the dual income society. Again, we are very comfortable and very fine with that. And I think that doing so willingly takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of savviness or creativity in order to switch our lifestyle around and figure out how to go about this life in a way that makes sense financially, but in a way that allows us to put our priorities first. And then there are times when everything happens at once. So my husband is self-employed, so we recently got a hefty tax bill. Then our bathroom leaked, then our car had parts that needed replacing, and everything was just happening at once, and we didn't have the money for it. And the worries of our finances consume us, and we start doubting if we were ever made to homeschool, or if we are able to do it in a world that's not really made for families like ours. And I confided that fear in my husband recently, and wondering whether this life that we have in mind that we're living works in the society we're part of, in this recession, in this Canadian economy. Because that was heavy on my mind. Of course, there's constantly doubts when you're a single income family. And he told me about that alternative life where 30% of my income would go towards taxes, where we would be rushing our children to school every single morning, rushing them out of bed, bringing them home, seeing them a couple of hours after school and after daycare, paying a lot of money for daycare bills, and then having all that to deal with, which we've done before with my firstborn as well. That whole situation of having another caregiver for your baby. And it got me thinking about how much of our family and of our life would be uprooted. I would be working only to sustain ourselves in this world, so maybe worrying about money is the better alternative than missing out on our children's childhood. Maybe worrying about an unexpected tax bill is better than barely knowing what my children are up to at the daycare or at school all day, most of the week. Maybe it's better than becoming a version of myself that I don't truly like and that I know is not the purpose that I'm meant to have in this world. To gain the privilege to homeschool our children, we needed to sacrifice so much of the worldly benefits and niceties and comforts, because we realized the trade-offs of a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Italy is not worth sacrificing our time with our children during this precious few years of being little, of childhood that they have, and of this influence that we get to have in their life. So no, we cannot go out as much. We don't eat out as much, or barely ever. We cannot buy a lot of things that people buy. We have a modest house, a car that works. So if we want to be pedantic about privilege, I would say that people who can afford those things are far more privileged than we are, and people who can afford those things are people on two incomes. But now, like I said, this is our choice. So I have no envy towards people who have a different kind of privilege than I do. And I think that as a society, we need to take the choices that we make and be happy with them. Take the blessings that are sent our way and be appreciative of them. Be content with the life we're living. And if this is not the life that you want, if you're one of those people who is watching this saying, well, that's all nice and well, but I would love to do what you're doing, and I am definitely not privileged enough to do it, I really think you need to think again, because it is not a lifestyle that is only for people who make a certain amount of money. It is not a lifestyle that is for people who have certain assets. It's not a lifestyle for people even who have a home. This is something you can do, but you need to realize what your priorities are and where they lay. And then that's when you can really rethink your own relationship with money and how you view money in your life and in your family life and in this world. Because to me, this little life of educating my children at home, us being under one roof, my children growing up with their siblings and building tight-knit connections all together and having these family traditions that are sometimes much easier to maintain when you have more time together, that is worth so much more than moving up in the world and in the society and having the extra money. Now, I know this is not every homeschooler's experience, but for most homeschooling families, this is the experience where we are making a lot of financial and worldly sacrifices. And when it comes to those wealthy, single income families who get to homeschool and keep their children at home, I applaud them because I would love to learn from them. I don't envy them. I think that they're paving a way for all of us to strive to be a little bit more comfortable in this lifestyle. I don't think that's anything to envy. I don't think anyone who's choosing to homeschool on a single income and who's barely making ends meet is saying, I want things to stay as they are. We all want to grow. We all want to thrive in what we're doing. And of course, we all want to make more money because we need money to be able to live in this world. So I feel like the people who are doing what they're doing and who have businesses and who are starting side hustles, I applaud them and I look up to you, and I want to do that too. And also, as women and as mothers, life is not a competition. I always say that to my girls whenever they're around other kids, that their other kids are not their competition. They are their own competition. So they just have to be a little bit better at that thing than they were the previous time. Just a little bit better than last time, and just keep growing, because other people, what other people do in their life, who they choose to be, what blessings come their way, has no impact on your life. It can inspire you, but it has no impact on your life. So somebody else's privilege doesn't take away your privilege in your own life. And I think calling women who get to stay at home or who choose to stay at home privileged is not going to change your circumstances. I speak to a lot of women who wish they could raise their children at home and who feel currently unable to do so. And I understand those women because I was there, and my heart goes out to them. And I think that praying on it, working towards that goal, not losing sight of that goal, goes a long way. And I think that showing that you don't need to be a specific type of wealthy family in order to live this lifestyle is really beneficial to those women, because I, for one, want more women who want to be close to their babies, who want to stay at home and homeschool their children, who don't want to send their kids in public school, to be able to do just that. I don't want them to feel like this is a life that's only for a certain class, a certain type of people, because clearly it isn't. So are homeschooling mothers privileged? Personally, I think getting to homeschool my children is a blessing, an honor, and a privilege. I think that stay-at-home mothers are the richest women in the world. How rich are we to have a home to take care of, a husband who loves us and who's hardworking, children to care for and to educate. We may not have the fanciest of cars or the biggest of houses or the best and newest of clothes. And our idea of self-care doesn't mean getting manicures or hair touch-ups every 6 months or whatever it is. Our fancy plates and mugs may come from a secondhand store, and our books are leased from the library. And our summer plans probably look like going to a nearby field and laying in the grass and just enjoying the clouds as they float by with our children. That's what it takes for us to be the richest women in the world. In the view of the world, we may not have it all, but I think that we have just enough of the truly good stuff, of the memory-making, relationship-building kind of good stuff. And that, to me, is worth far more than all the money in the world. So those of you who view stay-at-home mothers or homeschooling mothers as privileged, thank you. I'd like to challenge you to think of the kind of privilege that you yourself have. What are some beautiful things about your life that have been granted to you, that you have been blessed with? And do not take that for granted. Be content with those. And if this is not the kind of life you wished for, if you are a person who longs to stay home with their kids, then I'd like to challenge you to think that this life is for you. You are worthy of this life, and please don't lose sight of that. Don't shut yourself down by saying that is for the privileged, it is not for me, because it is not true. And I'm the living proof here of that. Because you are deserving of this life, and you are capable of making this life happen. And so don't be misled in thinking that this type of life is not for you. So I hope this was interesting for you, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. I'm always welcoming of respectful debate or discourse in the comments below. Whether you agree with what I'm saying or whether you disagree with it, you're equally welcome here. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.